We'll have to say, like, the title of this is going to be like, thanks for coming to my TED talk. Or
Right, right. Yeah, thanks for listening to Vincent blab about Zen and existentialism and blah, blah,
yeah,
blah.
and me try and make sense of it. So I have the wonderful Vincent Tweten with me. How are you, my friend?
Hey, doing good. Thank you very much, Tristan.
Awesome, man. So for those who may not be aware, Vincent is in the absolutely amazing Phobophilic. So how are things in Phobophilic world as you're kind of ramping up to the release of the new record?
Yeah, it's been really exciting. Really happy with what the turnout has been so far. Happy to get these songs out to people, and they've been living in our heads for a while. So yeah, it's been really exciting. This is like our debut album, so all of this feels very fresh and new. Yeah, cool stuff.
So I wanted to ask, obviously, the name is Phobophilic, but how did you guys come up with that as your band name?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a reference to Phobophile, the Cryptopsy song, and it's also like it's just kind of we just kind of wanted like something cool that relates to the music. So, I mean, with death metal, there's a lot of horror to it. So the name in particular kind of translates to like friend of fear or like lover of fear. So it just kind of was cool. We were like, yeah, that's the one.
That sounds like death metal enough.
Yeah, definitely. Check the boxes.
That's awesome, man. So is it kind of like so when you say like lover of beer, is it sort of like almost like someone who enjoys the thrill of being scared kind of thing? Is that how you would interpret it?
Yeah, that's kind of what I got from it. And all of us in the band are like really into horror movies and stuff. I'm probably the least like knowledgeable about them. The rest of the fellas are really like, they've got like a wall of movies. They've got all the Italian stuff, all the crazy French stuff. So I have no need to collect them because I'm just like, I'm gonna borrow that one and that one. Thanks, guys.
They've got the library. You can just kind of come in
Yeah,
whenever you need.
yeah. Check something out. That's fine. Yeah.
100%, man. I do love the Italian horrors, like, the Fulci kind of stuff and
Oh,
like
totally. Yeah.
zombie, all that sort of stuff. I thought that I can't remember exactly the name of it, but I think it's the second to last track on the album has like a very sort of like 80s horror introduction. And I was like, oh, these guys definitely know what's up.
So Josh, the guitar player, he writes the music and it very much takes a lot of inspiration from like kind of old horror movie soundtrack stuff and kind of more of the instrumental like pacing. And yeah, so he'd love to hear that you picked that up. That's cool.
So I wanted to ask you as well, what are kind of some of the themes that are on Enveloping Absurdity?
Yeah, for sure. So I wrote the lyrics for the album. Aaron and I kind of trade off on releases, but this album's kind of like my baby, and it's very much inspired. Mostly, it's like existentialism. So you can think, in particular, like the big French existentialists like Camus, Sartre, de Beauvoir, and I'm just really into like philosophy and stuff like that. So it comes a lot from my own like personal readings, and it's that kind of tied in with so there's a song in particular, Cathedrals of Blood, that's like very much a critique of organized religion. There's a couple other ones like The Illusion of Self that's very much like that one's a little more kind of weird and like zen. It kind of sticks out lyrically on the album because it's just something I'm into that I wanted to like tie into the theme. But I'd say for the most part, yeah, it's like kind of some mental health stuff and just like existentialism and how existentialism for me has been a tool to cope with like depression stuff. And I know it's death metal and maybe a lot of people won't think it's super cool to have like a hopeful note to it, but that's something I really like about existentialism is it's dealing with like harsh reality stuff, but it's it's finding a meaning in it and like striving for purpose against the like nihilism and the crushing everyday stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. And especially, now of all times, like I'm sure,
Yeah, it's bleak.
it's so bleak, man. It's
rough.
awful.
Yeah. So you really got to find like the silver lining, or I'm not a believer that things need to make sense or that there needs to be meaning, but it sure helps when you can find it, or when you can decide that there is one. Like maybe there isn't an inherent one, but like you in your own pursuits, you in your own like goals and just the things you love, the people you love, like you can absolutely carve out a life worth living that you can be proud of and have a good time.
What is it that kind of draws you to existentialism? Because it's quite a lofty subject.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess so. Like, I was in college for a little while, and I was studying like philosophy was like some of the stuff I was studying, but you start with like the Greek and the Aristotles and whatnot, and they're cool and they've got like some interesting thoughts, but nothing like clicked with me until I got to like kind of like World War II era, like French existentialism. I was like reading Albert Camus, and he just like really resonated with me. Like I just felt like I found someone who was thinking of life in the way that I like to. And yeah, I guess it made sense to me in a way that like other like schools of philosophy just didn't. I thought they were like, they're fine, but I didn't see the point to it too much. They were thinking about things that I just didn't really care about. And like Camus' big thing is he's like, before we answer any of the other philosophical questions, like why are we here, blah blah blah, like the first question is like, why have we not like killed ourselves yet? Like clearly there's a point to life. Clearly you found a meaning to life that you want to struggle on and keep living, And I mean, it's very dark, but like I think that that's a nice way to put it, because if you think about it, like, well, I do want to continue on. I do want to keep living. So in that, you've already found something. I think as human beings, there's this innate want. There's always this desire for more. We have a habit of never being quite pleased with ourselves. We'll maybe give ourselves a little victory, but there's always another hill, And I just really like the idea of, maybe you already have it. Maybe you're already where you want to be if you just find the right way to look at it or appreciate it.
So it's as much about perception as it is sort of understanding of it all, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And like, the more you achieve the things you set out to achieve, the more you'll keep looking. And really you have to find a way to, and this isn't like I'm not against achieving things, like live your dream, do your shit. But like, I think if you're just always hoping that the next thing is going to fulfill you, you'll find that it's a bit hollow, and you won't find it.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like, in a sort of like really simplistic way, like materialism, like I'm a massive vinyl collector, and it's always that the next album,
right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I have the black vinyl, but only if I had gotten the Splatter 200 limited variant. Damn it. I can never be happy. Yeah, exactly.
Oh God, that sounds like such a first world problem when I think about it.
It absolutely does. It's so silly.
But to be fair, man, like I think that's an amazing thing that you'll be able to do for, perhaps someone who doesn't know how to reach out and who feels lost and doesn't know how to kind of convey that sense of emotion. And, having something like that in, death metal, I think is amazing.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. And like, not going to pretend like I have the answers. I struggle with it as much as anyone, like I find myself having these problems, and although I may be able to look at it and be like, oh, I should really like, I've really got it good. Like there's a lot going and I'm like, I should be happy. There's the guilt that comes with recognizing that you have all you could want and yet wanting more. And it's like, the album is as much for myself as it is for everyone else. Like I hope that I can take his message to heart on the days that I'm having trouble with it too.
It must be nice as
Yeah.
well for you to kind of look at, it's like a solid body of work that encompasses that kind of idea, and you can be like, oh well, when I'm feeling that way, I can look at this album and be like, oh, maybe I feel better, kind of thing.
Totally. And it's like, yeah, it's absolutely something that I'm incredibly proud of. Like it's definitely my best drum work to date, like by far. We really like kicked our asses into gear trying to write this stuff. And we have a habit of when we're writing music, we are always we're kind of playing beyond our abilities. I'm always trying to think of like what will serve the song. And sometimes I'll have an idea that will serve the song and I just like I can't play it. Like so I have to push myself to be able to play it. And then you have to think of it like, okay, I can finally play it. But can I play it for 2 weeks every night? Like, on a hot stage. So it's always kind of this pushing of the boundaries thing that we're trying to do. Yeah, thematically and like physically with what we're playing.
I'm curious in terms of like lyrics and things like that. Is that all kind of fairly directly relevant to the French existentialism, or is it kind of like a lot of other things as well on the record?
I would say, yeah, so it's mostly referencing stuff I've read by like Camus and Sartre, but there's a little Nietzsche in there. There's, like I said before, Simone de Beauvoir is like another really incredible existentialist. On Having No Head, I think
Mm-hmm.
is what it's called, and it's by Douglas Harding, and it's like this very strange, like kind of Zen thing where I'm going to do a terrible job of explaining this. There are really great like other resources. So if a listener is curious about it, like absolutely just find the book. But it's like a really interesting way of viewing the world where you think of yourself not as having an actual head. Like I will never experience my own head as someone else around me will. It's kind of that thing like you never see yourself truly in a way that a third person can. But his whole philosophy is truly like, no, I don't have a head. Like I've never seen it. Like maybe I see it in a mirror, but like I am just I'm this oval boundary of vision. I am space for the world to fill. It's just like kind of I think it sounds so silly, but it's like such an interesting way to feel like a part of your surroundings. But yeah, again, I butchered that absolutely. So if anyone's interested in it, please go find the book. He does a much better job with it. And I can't say that I believe it on like a surface level. Like I don't think I'm literally headless. I recognize, and maybe it's just because I am not enlightened enough yet. I still think I have a head, but I just really like the sentiment of it and like what he's like trying to give to people. I just think it's an interesting philosophy. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, for sure, man. I feel like was that kind of reflected in the album's artwork as well? Because it's kind of like there isn't
Mm.
necessarily one particular organism thing. It's kind of lots of different bits.
Yeah, so that guy's name, Junis Rasanan. He on Instagram, it's I think it's EVM. It's Endless Vast Mysterium. I may be saying that wrong, but it's yeah, really cool artist, really cool name. But yeah, he's from Finland, and actually we didn't commission that piece. We just like saw it and like licensed it from him because we were like, yes, this is the album art. We just kind of saw it and knew, and it just kind of did a great job of capturing the feel of the album. So yeah, kind of cool. He made that like without us in mind, you know, and then it just fit our needs perfectly.
Obviously, you're a lyricist extraordinaire, but now you're like a George Collier at the same time, man.
I can't say I've ever gotten that comparison. That's sick.
You're like super nimble, man. You know, like look very, very free in sort of your playing. Like, is it kind of, do you take influence primarily from metal drummers, or do you kind of have a bit of like a jazz kind of vibe going there, or what's the deal?
Honestly, yeah. So I mean, my favorite drummer, Sean Reiner, rest in peace as well, is like, you know, that's a lot of the reason. I for a long time I kind of felt like I wanted to play like him, but I didn't know how to kind of free up more, you know, because my approach to drumming comes from more of like a punk hardcore background where it's pretty like there's not a lot of room to, maybe this isn't true for all bands, but I had a hard time not just playing like the same types of beats and stuff when I was playing in bands like that. So yeah, I love jazz music. All my favorite drummers are like, you know, like Vinny Colaiuta and like Akira Jimbo. They're just like prog legends who just play like the craziest shit and are always like switching up the time and like just having fun with it. And like you said, you know, that free feeling is like, that's absolutely something I'm trying to capture and I hope I continue to get better at. But like, yeah, Sean Reinhardt is a big reason why I want to play like that. Cause I remember the first time that I heard like Human and that I heard like all the Cynic albums and I was like, how the fuck does he do this? Like, it just sounds like it fits the song so well. And it does such a great way of, it just has this very fluid element to it where he's just like, he's all over the kit. He plays the toms like no metal drummer plays the toms and like just doing such interesting things that you put any other drummer on that album and it would like be nowhere near as good, you know? And like he was like 19, 20 when he did Human. Like he had like a week in the studio and it took him less than 2 days. And then they wrote an instrumental for that album because they just had more time. And then they did like a Kiss cover because they just like had more time because he was a fucking legend who just nailed it out. And you know, it was like different back then. He couldn't like cut in a bunch and like make a bunch of edits. Like he had to fucking nail that song, you know?
But I want to kind of go back to the existentialism again because I feel like it's weirdly something that's kind of embedded in death metal a lot, particularly with death, like Human, The Sound of Perseverance, all that sort of stuff. Why do you think that is? I know it's quite an open question, but
no, yeah, and well, honestly, I watched this this death interview where Chuck is like, he's basically being like, you know, yeah, I kind of shed the horror thing because I realized like, you know, life is bad enough. Like I can write about real things and it's still death metal, you know? Like I don't have to make up shit. Like, and don't get me wrong, like the death metal where people are like making up whatever, like that shit's cool and like absolutely has its place. And I love it. But I like the real world stuff too, because I think, yeah, you can absolutely take these themes and see them through like a death metal lens. Like our first couple releases in particular were more kind of like, you know, like Lovecraftian cosmic horror stuff. And on this album, I was really like, you know, I wanna write about stuff I really believe and stuff that is like the real world. Because just like, yeah, it was very inspiring, that Chuck interview, because I was like, oh, you know, that's a great point. There really is like enough material you can draw from that is real that you can make a death metal album about it pretty easily. Yeah,
definitely, man. I also feel like, you know, despite the somewhat caveman aesthetics, that death metal fans are pretty open-minded overall.
oh yeah, I think so too. Like as long as I've been like involved in music, being in the death metal scene and particularly like the underground, I have met just like the sweetest fucking people who are so, yeah, just so accepting, so cool, and so just like just wanting to make sure everybody's having a good time and like loving each other and checking in on each other. Like I've got so many just like little Instagram metal homies that like, you know, they just like check in on me and we're just like great pals that I've never met and that we genuinely like care about each other. It's just so sweet. I've never experienced that like in any other thing that I've done, you know? It's just cool.
Just despite all the songs talking about hacking everyone's limbs off.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, yeah, and that's just another part of it. I feel like, you know, this type of music or just like art in general is such a like it's such a release. I don't think you need to make art that you believe what you're saying, you know. I think you can absolutely like just have fun with it and whatever, but it's just not quite what we wanted to do with this band, you know. And either or is like valid, you know.
Absolutely, man. So quickly going to the title of the record, Enveloping Absurdity. Is that kind of like I don't know, I'm probably going to butcher the the imagery of this, but like
Nah.
almost like a sort of like an infinite absurdity, essentially. Is that kind of what you guys were going for? Or if I got that completely wrong?
No, I feel like it's fairly close. Like absurdity is very much like, I mean, it's this just, it shows up a lot in existentialist text, and it's very much like just the recognizing of the separation of what you want life to be and like what it is.
Mhm.
So to me, like picking out that title was kind of like it's the absurd is just like it's always surrounding you, and it like it can kind of like smother you and like, you know, envelop you. So it's, yeah, I guess what I mean by it is that like that it's just everywhere, and
Mhm.
it's just something that you can't really help but recognize, and as soon as you do recognize it, you can't really stop, you know. It's just always there. Because like as soon as you realize like how fucking ridiculous this is and how we're just like these little blips sharing this little space at the same time, and the same, like it's crazy that here you and I are like connecting about music over a Zoom call in different time zones, talking about this very niche sect of underground music and philosophy. Like it's just silly. Like from a just like grand scheme, like it's hilarious, but it's so cool. So like I think there's the two schools of philosophy that they have so much to do together, but are very separate, like existentialism and absurdism, where absurdism is like nothing. It's like, you know, it's kind of close to nihilism. It's like there's no meaning, you know, like you were saying, like there's no meaning. And then existentialism is like there's no meaning. Ah, it's cool. So you can carve out the meaning, you know. You can decide what means something to you. You can make something of meaning, you know. It's like you can either look at it as, yeah, like this dismal thing, like what's the fucking point, or you can look at it like, oh, so freeing, like the chains are gone, you know. I can do whatever. I can make a fucking death metal record that, I don't know, and write about whatever I want, you know.
Yeah,
It's
man.
cool.
Yeah, man. We'll have to say, like, you know, the title of this is going to be like, thanks for coming to my TED talk.
Right, right. Yeah, thanks for listening to Vincent blab about Zen and existentialism and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
And me try and make sense of it.
No, you're killing it. Yeah.
So what was it that drew you to death metal in the first place then?
You know, I think it's just I just like when I was young, I just, you know, I grew up kind of listening to the things that my older brother was listening to. He put me onto like punk and hardcore and, you know, kind of just like basic metal stuff. But I always found myself wanting something more extreme and like continuing to look for that. And death metal is just the perfect balance of I love how extreme it is, but it's also not like I still okay, not to say that there isn't substance in incredibly extreme things, but I find it easier in death metal. Like there's a balance where yes, it's extreme, but also I like the light moments. I like the moments that make you appreciate the extreme. When there's like contrast, you know, like when you have the kind of more open-ended, like spacey, proggy, jazzy shit, it really like makes the blasts and the just like pummeling bass drum sections like just hit so much harder because you have kind of that breathing room, you know. Plenty of black metal bands where like yes, they are like really fast, but they also have kind of those almost like folky or those like more they slow it down and they like play something kind of triumphant that it just makes you appreciate the speed more when they contrast it.
On the theme of fear, what's something that you fear the most?
That's a great question. Yeah, what do I fear the most? I mean, I guess there's a few ways I could take it as far as like a physical thing goes. Like I'm a bit freaked out of heights. Like I'd rather not fall from a tall height, you know? Some people are into that. It's not for me. I don't want to fall and be horribly injured or killed that way. I think there's a very human fear of just being like isolated in a way that I wouldn't do well, just like isolated to myself. Sometimes I think it's really helpful for reflection, but I am very much a person who thrives around other people is something I've been realizing more about myself, you know, even just one other person, but I don't want to be just like alone with my thoughts for a long amount of time, you know. Sounds scary.
Did you guys write Enveloping Absurdity throughout the pandemic, or was it kind of penned before then, or how did it go? I haven't even asked this question actually.
Oh no, yeah, you're good. We started it, I want to say, with slight confidence. We started it before the pandemic, and then we kind of we were in the midst of like songwriting, working through stuff when it hit, and then we were like, oh, we need to rethink how we're gonna do this because we're trying to write an album. Like, what do we do? So I mean, I'm a little technologically challenged, so I was fortunate that the rest of my bandmates are very smart people, and they helped me figure out how to. I got this like a little electric kit back there. I don't know if you can really see it, but I bought that right when the pandemic hit. I was like, well, I'm not getting to my real drums. I live in an apartment. They don't want me to play real drums in here. So I'm gonna get an electric kit, and we'll demo out the song. So Josh would like, you know, write a song, send it to me. I'd throw some drums on it, send it back. We'd revise it. So we kind of just developed a new method for us. I mean, obviously that's like a pretty standard thing for like established bands who live remote, but we've always lived really close together and have always just valued getting in a room together and like teaching each other a song, you know? So it was interesting to do it remote, but it was pretty effective.
What was it kind of like you would bring an idea to the table and then you'd kind of like flesh it out as a band, or was it kind of like everyone would have their separate sort of audio files and you'd kind of just go back and forth kind of thing?
It was kind of like, well, we've kind of developed a system that's been working for us where it's like Josh is like the songwriter. He'll write the riffs, he'll bring them to me, I flesh out drums on it. Sometimes he'll have an idea of what the drums should do. And like, you know, some of my favorite drum parts are like not my idea. Like we try to operate as kind of like a collective where, you know, everybody's got a voice in it, and whatever the best idea is, we try to go with that, you know, like ego aside. Like, yeah. So like I was saying, like a lot of my favorite parts, like I wanted to play something else. And then they were like, you know, what if you did this? And then I tried it and I was like, oh yeah, that's way cooler. Thank you. And so we'd kind of like build on each other. And so maybe the file had like, yeah, Josh's guitar, my drums, and then we'd be like, Aaron, you should write a guitar solo here. And then he'd flesh it out, send it over, and we'd just like talk about it, and yeah, just kind of keep building on the layers and revising until it like felt like a song.
100%, man. So what does Enveloping Absurdity mean to you as a record? You know, now you guys are going to put this out. What? Because it sort of stops being yours once it's out.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's very true. I haven't thought of it like that, but that's very true. Ooh, a little spooky. I guess it's yeah, I mean, we wanted to make the best thing we possibly could, and just continuing on themes that we had started laying out, and just continuing to push the boundaries. Like, I think in like some of our older music, we had maybe had like little flares of like a light moment, or a kind of a progressive passage, or just like a really heavy moment. But we wanted to have more of both of those things on the album. So make it heavier, but make it also more melodic, make it more like dynamic. And I hope that this for us is just kind of trying to show people like, this is the bar we're trying to set for ourselves, and we're going to try and just keep pushing it up. Like lyrically, I don't really want to dive back into like kind of a Lovecraftian horror thing in the future. Like, I'd like to just kind of set this precedence and write about meaningful things and kind of create this phobophilic universe, if we can, you know. Maybe that sounds a bit grandiose, but I don't know. Gonna at least try. We'll see if we do it. But yeah.
But like you said, you know, if you get one person who comes up to you and says, "Hey, this, you know, this helped," or "This sort of changed my perspective," you know.
Yeah, then it's a total fucking victory. Like, then it's worth it. I think it just comes down to be kind to yourself every chance you get. Like, you know, we're thrust into this world trying to live, and sometimes it's really hard, and you just gotta be able to look out for one another and pursue the cool shit you want to do, you know. Like, it's never too late to pick up an instrument. Like, people ask me all the time, like, oh, how did you, like, you're so naturally good at drums. And I'm like, no, like, you just didn't see when I sucked. I practice like every day. I promise you, it does not come naturally. Like, just give it a go. You're gonna suck. That's just, you can't be good at anything when you start. You're gonna suck, and just push through. If you care to push through, you want to get good at something, like, you'll do it.
So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, Vincent. It's been really nice meeting you, and hopefully I can see you in the UK when you guys come around on tour at some point.
Yeah, man, we would fucking love that. Been my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, man. Means the world.